Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Tayla Andre, and you are waking up with Tayla Andre. Waking up with Tayla Andre is not about the time of day that we link up, but about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. And today, our unorthodox conversation is about decoding dyslexia. Today, we are speaking with Nancy Duggan of Decoding Dyslexia, Massachusetts, and we are going to talk about what is dyslexia, who suffers from dyslexia, what causes dyslexia, how do I improve my dyslexia, and what are public schools doing to hinder or help students that suffer from dyslexia. Good rising, how are you?
Great, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Like, our conversations have been amazing, and I wanted to share the information that you've shared with me with the viewers. And so tell the viewers who may not know you a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Nancy, and I am a licensed school counselor. I'm also a reading specialist and parent of a student that has dyslexia, so who's now an adult. My children are grown. So over the years of trying to figure out reading and why some of my children had no problem learning to read and one child had significant difficulty learning to read, I've learned a lot along the way. And then coincidentally, when I was getting a master's degree for counseling, I took a neuroscience class. And the timing was right because there's been some great neuroscience research in the last 25, but even in the last 5 to 10 years, that although I myself am not a researcher, interested me greatly because I've seen the results of dyslexia not only in my own family, but in the schools. As a middle school counselor, you see kids who come to middle school struggling to read, even though they've had the same school experience as their peers. And you know, that made me think, like, what's going on in the brain? I need to learn more. So I am a member of the International Dyslexia Association, and I'm trained as a dyslexia therapist. So I've kind of been focusing a lot of my attention and education on dyslexia. So what is dyslexia? Dyslexia is, we find it or we talk about it usually when kids are having a hard time learning to read. So kids go to school like all the other kids, you know, they're just typical kids, and then they get to school, and school's harder for these kids than for their peers. And they know right away. There's all kinds of research out there that shows us kids with reading disabilities, learning disabilities of any kind, and particularly reading disabilities, as soon as kids get to kindergarten and first grade and printed text, learning letters and words and things like that, suddenly becomes part of their daily life. And it's hard for them. They're not getting it. And they know right away that the persons next to them or their peers in their class are not having that trouble. So typically, and certainly in my experience with my daughter, who again is in her 20s now, we thought everything was great. Third child, talkative, loved to go to school, you know, stood in line, waited her turn, all the things that kindergartners are supposed to do. But we didn't even realize until going into third grade, we knew something was up, but we kept thinking, oh, give it time. We listened to teachers and school personnel that said, oh, not everyone gets it, you know, give it time, give it time. And what I've learned, and the reason I started Decoding Dyslexia, is because unfortunately, give it time is the worst advice we can give parents of kids who are struggling to read. Because developmentally, language and reading and adapting to text is really best dealt with early, okay? So we waited, and you know, and now I learned that that was probably the worst thing we could have done. Because for my daughter and any other child who is discovered in third or fourth grade with this disability, the uphill climb to catch up just gets harder and harder. It's going to take more resources. It's going to take more time. It's going to take more effort from the child. What's very easy for a kindergartner to adapt to because they are developing language skills at that time is going to be much more difficult for a fourth or fifth grader. Not to mention the social emotional factor of motivation. if you've come to school every day and you've given it your best and it wasn't working, and so then, you know, you had the regular classroom teacher, but then they pulled you out and put you with a different teacher, and you thought, this is it, I'm going to go out with Miss Sue, and Miss Sue's sweet and nice, and other kids go out to Miss Sue, and I'm going to get it this time. But your experience with that pullout is that you don't get it. The one thing you've learned is
you're different.
That you're different, or you're not getting it. And when we don't name it, label it, and help these kids, they come up with their own name and label, and they think they're stupid. Okay, so something must be wrong with me if all my peers and, you know, teacher number 1 and teacher number 2 both can't get it. Now I'm pulled out. Now I try. No matter how hard I try, I can't get the spelling words. Okay, so they're learning a negative image of themselves along the way, and they're learning to be less motivated in school. And this becomes a problem. So not only are they not accessing the curriculum the way their peers are, but they're also getting this message that no matter how hard I try, it doesn't work for me.
It's still not good enough. Let's say, for instance, like someone's watching right now and they're just like, well, you know, that sounds like my experience in school. What exactly, or in layman's terms, the easiest way possible, how can you describe what dyslexia is?
So I just described how people come to it, but what it really is it starts actually before you're born. It's genetically a predisposition of a number of genes. It's not one gene. It's a combination. And so biologically or neurobiologically, we all have certain cells in our brains. A dyslexic brain and a typical brain are very much both healthy brains.
Okay. So I won't see this on like a CAT scan. I won't.
Well, it's not like there's a defect. Like a lot of times people will say, oh, I have poor working memory. It doesn't mean that the area where working memory is has like a hole in it. You know, like, okay, the cells are there. So dyslexia is a difficulty in processing language. It starts actually in a different way or a different pathway that some brains use to process language, oral language, speaking language. So for instance, there's a process that we all use in all languages that is manipulating the smallest speech sounds. So there's something called a phoneme. A phoneme is the smallest bite of sound.
Phonetic.
Kind of like phonetics, but phonetics is attaching it to a letter.
Okay.
The phoneme is with no letters. So you can do phonemic awareness in your sleep with your eyes, well, not in your sleep, but with your eyes closed. You don't need to have any letters or any text or any manipulatives. So if I say to you, there's the word cup.
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 Okay.
What's the first sound in the word cup?
So if we're talking to younger Tayla, it could be a C, it could be a K, it could be a Q.
No, the sound, not the letter. K.
K.
Just
K.
K. No, like no letters. There's no letters. No letters exist.
No letters exist.
Okay, so we're human beings, like hundreds of thousands of years ago, we have language, but we don't use text. We don't know the letters of the alphabet. Okay? Socrates or Plato, one of those famous people, couldn't read or write, okay? So we're way back then. They could be brilliant, they could have lots of things to say, but they don't associate them with the alphabetic principle at all. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
So the first sound of cup is k. K-a-p. No letters, cup. When you speak to a baby, when they're little babies, you go, oh, mama, 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 and you talk to them, and they go, mama, 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 back, okay? No letters. You're not saying M, mama, and put the little sign in there, you know? So no, it's just language sounds.
Yes.
So what kids learn, here's a great example. So in English, we have a complex manipulation of sounds for our grammar, much more complex than other languages, because to varying degrees, we change our language.
Yes.
Again, let's leave letters out of it. Okay? But this is cup. When I have two of them, I say cups. I add the s sound. Again, forget how you spell it. Adding a s sound means there's going to be more than one.
Yes.
Okay? The same thing for if I'm going to visit grandma. Yesterday, I visited grandma. I put an ed after certain for tenses. Again, forget spelling of it, just we know that's what we do. So when a young child that's 3 or 4 says, I go to the store, even though we would say I went because it's an irregular verb, that child is doing an amazingly wonderful thing. And I love that mistake because, again, we're talking about a 3 or 4-year-old.
Yes.
Now they've heard language enough to know that that ed sound means past tense, to adapt that and know that it's past tense and to use it. Even if inappropriately, it tells us, aha, that child has good phonemic awareness.
I go to the store.
Okay? So it's a wonderful example of a little kid's mistake that tells us that that child knows how to manipulate the sounds of language. Again, forget letters, forget writing. We're not there.
Okay.
Okay? Kids' ability to manipulate sound, to hear those differences, and it can be simple like the first letter, the first sound of a word like cup, or it can be a little more complex. What's the middle sound of cat? It's an ah. So sometimes hearing the middle sound is harder for kids. Okay? So there's all kinds of preschool games that kids play with sounds and whatnot, those rhyming games, you know, when kids do like this kind of stuff. All that kind of rhyming, just the manipulating of sounds and hearing the differences and hearing the similarities. That process is called phonological processing.
Say that again?
Phonological processing.
Phonological processing.
Right.
Okay.
So there's lots of things in our brain that help us do that.
Okay.
Okay? That's just language. So you can have a problem in that language. You could have a little bit slower phonological processing. You have networks in your brain. Again, people are born with brain cells that are completely healthy. They say ma, ma, ma. Some kids might have speech delay, like maybe slower to speak. Not every person with dyslexia will have that issue, but there's a lot of these processes that come together. And that's sort of one set of brain circuitry that we need for reading, because we need it for language. So anything we need for language, we're going to need for reading, because reading is language and text. Okay? Reading, there's a guy named Stanislaw Dehaene, and then there's another one, Mark Seidenberg. These are two great books. One is, I think, Reading in the Brain, and the other one is Language at the Speed of Sight. I think I should have brought the little cheat sheet, but anyway, there's a lot of neuroscience that tells us, this is not like me coming up with this, but there's a lot of neuroscience that tells us that reading is such a cool phenomenon because reading is tricking your eyes to see something on the page. Maybe it's a C, an A, and a T, cat, and hearing sound, cat. Actually, we'll use cup because we got our little cup here. So if I have the letter C, the letter U, and the letter P, my eyes have to see each one of those letters, connect them with the sound, up, blend them together, recall what a cup is, okay, and speak it. That's a lot of like little image, electricity shooting through your brain. Like here's the message that says that's cup. Okay, so reading is tricking our eyes to see sound.
So reading is tricking our eyes to see sound.
From the letters, right.
And dyslexia
is trouble doing that.
That's more than I understood, but I'm piecing it together. When we come right back, we're going to continue this conversation with Nancy Duggan, Decoding Dyslexia, and having a better understanding of what it is and how parents can assist their children in coping, because it's not really something that can be solved.
Oh, kids can learn to read. You can have dyslexia and become a good reader, but you need to recognize it and you need to help them the right way.
Well, we are going to help you recognize whether or not your child suffers from dyslexia. Here is a quick PSA, and we'll be right back.
When I was 6, my days were spent playing basketball. When I was 6, My dream was to make it to the NBA. When I was 6, my mom had a stroke.
I'm Paul George, and I want you to spot a stroke fast.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911.
Protect the ones you love.
Spot a stroke fast.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed all that.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Good rising, good evening, good afternoon, or good night. I am Tayla Andre, and we are back with Waking Up with Tayla Andre with Nancy Duggan of Decoding Dyslexia. So in the first half, we learned the neuroscience and the science behind dyslexia. So we're going to try and break it down a little bit more for those who didn't quite understand. Nancy, let's sum up what we just...
So the short version for parents, or the things that parents really should be looking for, is a couple of things. One, the ability to rhyme, the ability to name things quickly. So colors, things like that. And it's not about practicing doing that. It's literally about how long does it take for kids to process things in their brain. Some kids have slower processing speed or slower naming speed. And some kids have problems with that phonological awareness that we talked about. So phonological awareness and naming speed are the two key indicators. But the easiest key indicator is familial. So if in your family, siblings, aunts, uncles, mom, dad, people have a history of having trouble learning to read, even if they're now good readers, that's the biggest key indicator, is familial history.
So reading is not something that somebody would say, you know, I'm a slow reader, or I don't read well at all, or I can't read. That's not something that people are willing to admit. So that's something that you may not know about family. How else can a parent decode their child's dyslexia?
Well, for different ages, it's going to show itself in different ways. First of all, any child in school, 2nd, 3rd grade, getting extra help, Title I, I don't care what the extra help is, they only get extra help if they're not keeping up with their peers. So I would say that parents, you have a right to ask for more detailed testing. You just have to do it in writing. You have to send a note to the school and say, I would like a complete evaluation, and ask for phonological awareness processing and naming speed processing.
Say that again for parents who don't know, or that didn't catch it the first time.
Say you're concerned about your child's reading. Thank them for the help that they're giving, because usually the #1 reason you know is because they're pulling your child out for Title I or for some other response to intervention type of services. But if the school is not recognizing it as dyslexia, these special services, as I described earlier, might be just reinforcing to the child that they're not capable. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen.
And we're asking for?
So you write in writing to completely evaluate your child's reading and phonological awareness skills and naming speed skills.
Can I just say, you know, I don't believe there's anything wrong with my child, but he or she may suffer from dyslexia. Because I feel like, personally, I don't think that a child should have an IEP for dyslexia. I don't feel like dyslexia is, not that it's not IEP worthy, but if it's so common, why does it have to be like a special service? If it's so many people suffer from it, why isn't it encompassed in a classroom instead of encompassed?
It could be, and in some schools it is, not a lot of schools.
No, you say it louder.
Not a lot of schools, but See, the thing is, if you, and this is one of the things we're trying to do as Decoding Dyslexia, is to raise awareness and to pass a law for universal screening of all kindergartners at age 5
Yes.
for phonological processing and rapid naming speed and his family history.
So what do you need from us, the parents, to assist you in passing this law to encompass this in kindergarten? Because again, I don't feel like we should need an IEP for this. This is not extra money. This should be in kindergarten, whether or not my child needs extra help.
The screening should definitely be in kindergarten and first grade. And most kids, it kind of gets a little complicated because most kids could learn this underlining fundamental skills if they're targeted, you know, if that's what you're using for response to intervention, which is general ed, and you're targeting these skills for those kids that have these deficits. So instead of just pulling them out and trying whatever we have on the shelf, but actually targeting phonological processing, that's going to help most kids, and many kids will then never need an IEP. But it happens like so many differences on a continuum. You can be mild phonological processing deficit and you're dyslexic, but you might do really well once you get the right instruction. Other kids might have what we call a double deficit. They have a deficit in both the phonological processing and also in naming speed, rapid automatized naming.
Okay.
And that's important. I won't get into why that's important until later, but that's important too in reading fluently.
Okay.
So there's learning to read k, up, cup, and then there's having, you know, reading okay, and at the end of the sentence you say, what's the main idea? And they go, I don't know. Okay, the comprehension, connecting to text and processing it as you're reading so that you're comprehending as you go. We call that reading fluency, and that can be impacted by naming speed. So when kids have a larger deficit or double deficit, those kids probably will need an IEP. And because they learn differently. I mean, that's really the goal of an IEP, is to identify kids with specific disabilities, and dyslexia is a named disability under IDEA law. It 100% deserves an IEP if the child is not getting the services they need.
So how many people suffer in the United States suffer from dyslexia? But you also said that you are a member of the international.
Well, there's the International Dyslexia Association, because people have been studying dyslexia since long before me. Like in the 1920s, there was Anna Gillingham and Samuel Orton, and they started this society, and there's this group of people that understand how to teach kids with dyslexia, and they have knowledge and practice standards, and they're very, very helpful. International Dyslexia Association has a branch in Massachusetts, and they run conferences, and you can get good tutoring from someone certified through them. So that's one thing. Decoding Dyslexia has a national network. Decoding Dyslexia has a group like ours in every state and 4 Canadian provinces. It's a completely grassroots group because parents and professionals were frustrated at the inability of schools in some places to even use the word dyslexia. In fact, in Massachusetts, it's been the experience of most of our members that the school will not even say the word dyslexia, even though it's listed under IDEA law in the federal government.
Why is that?
That's a very good question. That's why we have, in fact, I have my little thing here. We have like 4 bills in Massachusetts that are up in the legislature now. H330, H2872, Senate Bill 313, and Senate Bill 294. And basically one of the things is for the state to acknowledge the scientific definition of dyslexia.
Pause. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Did you say that one of the bills is for the state to acknowledge what science has already proven?
Yep. Yep, because we go to school after school and they say, oh, we don't do that. Even in my own school, because I hate to tell other families' stories because it's kind of like not, but in my own school, I live in Acton, Massachusetts, and again, my daughter's well past this now, but it's still happening. You know, I came with a neuropsychology report from very reputable Boston hospital and said, my child has dyslexia, and they said, Mrs. Duggan, we don't have that here in Acton. We don't say dyslexia. We don't deal with that.
I'm disgusted.
You know, so And then they said she may never learn to read because, again, I'm finding this out at the end of 3rd grade, and she can't read at all. And I'm like, we need to give her special ed. And they said, she may never learn to read. You'll just have to lower your expectations.
So, as a parent, that's completely unacceptable. Can you, again, what do you need from us, the parents, the educators, that are completely unaware of this bill? What is the name and number of the bill so we can contact our senators? So we can contact our congressmen, so we can contact those that need to act.
So this is these are state legislators. So not the folks in Washington right now, not that there's not things they could do, but this is state legislation I'm talking about.
Sonia Chang Diaz.
Sonia Chang Diaz is a wonderful supporter
love
of
her.
ours, okay? So there are bills, House 330 and House 2872 and Senate 313. And those 3 bills pretty much say very similar, if not exactly the same thing.
Okay, say that one more time.
House 330, House 2872, and Senate Bill 313.
Okay.
So we have Representative Chris Walsh from Framingham, Representative Alice Peisch from Wellesley, and Senator Bruce Tarr from the North Shore Gloucester area.
Okay.
And then we also have Senate Bill 294, which is much more comprehensive. So while the first 3 say, let's recognize the scientific definition of dyslexia accepted by the National Institute of Health. Let's just make sure that our teachers and our parents, when they say the word dyslexia, are all talking about the same definition. Okay, because there's a lot of myths out there.
Yeah.
Dyslexic people have no vision problem. They do not see backwards. Kids often describe it because they're having trouble processing, so it might seem that way, but the words on the page are not moving for these students. Okay? They seem to be. Early screening starting no later than age 5. Phonemic awareness, rapid naming, and letter sound knowledge. I mean, there's so much evidence out there. Other states are doing it. There's over 28 other states that have early screening laws. We need to join those.
With Massachusetts being #1, or at least claiming to be #1 in everything.
We have the highest NAEP scores. You keep hearing that. We also have the largest gap between our. Our kids that do well do very well, and our kids that do poorly poor. Okay, so it's a problem for Massachusetts, and I'm proud of our education system on many levels because we do recognize kids and put them on IEPs more than any other state. We're a generous state with education money. It's not a money issue in Massachusetts. The problem is, and I could show you, like I think I showed you charts and graphs before.
If I can interject, I believe the problem is the fact that we don't have a state that first and foremost acknowledges scientific research. Second of all, we have a state that doesn't make it mandatory for kindergartners to be pre-screened or screened. I think for me, that's the problem. The second problem for me would be the fact that you haven't named every senator in the state of Massachusetts.
Now, we have about 50-ish supporters. Senate is much stronger. Senator Barbara Italian, her bill 294 includes not only recognizing in the screening, but teacher training. It's a much more comprehensive bill. So it's sort of what I call like the gold ring, like if we could get everything we ever wanted.
And what is that?
That's Senate Bill 294.
294.
Yeah. So I can leave you with
Yes,
these.
please.
And
where can we visit to find that information?
So we have a very active Facebook group, so you can just look on Decoding Dyslexia Massachusetts for our Facebook group. We have a private group that's really not that private. If you ask to get in, you can be in the private group. The main page gives parents a lot of information on how to help kids. I mean, there's just daily information on both policy, how to help us pass bills, but also very good concrete, what reading, like there's a whole consumer protection of reading program. Is the reading program that your child is in really helping your child? How to know, how to measure that, what tests to ask for. I mean, there's so much detail about the complexity of reading, and we try to provide that on a Facebook page and also on our website. So our website is decodingdyslexiama.massachusetts.org. So we have lots of information there. It's a free, we have no money, nobody pays us. We don't raise money, we don't charge to be a member, there's no budget, there's nothing. but we're just parents and professionals. We have great support from excellent researchers in Massachusetts, Boston Children's Hospital, Dr. Nadine Gaab, MIT, Dr. John Gabrielli, Mass General Institute of Health Professions, Tiffany Hogan, Tufts Center for Reading and Language, Stephanie Gottwald and Melissa Orkin. Great researchers. Oh, at Emerson College has Kelly Farquharson, who is also the president of Speech and Language Association. Many professionals understand this problem and are working with parents to get this to educators and to policymakers in the State House.
And we are going to talk a little bit more about what solutions parents can work on. We're going to take a quick break and you guys can tune into this PSA. Again, I am Tayla Andre, Nancy Duggan, Decoding Dyslexia. We'll be right back.
Hey, look, it's those guys. Are you good to drive?
I'm fine.
How many did you have?
I should be fine.
You should be.
Go and step out of the vehicle for me.
See ya, buddy. Good luck. So turns out, buzz driving and drunk driving, they're the same thing, and it costs around $10,000. So not worth it.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. At work or at play, you're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Oh, hey, she's cute. Nice going, man. Things are going great for you. You've earned a night out. Good drinks, good friends. Yeah, we can go ahead and call this a good night. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Not smart. Yeah, I saw that coming. Say goodbye to her. Ouch, that'll hurt your bank account. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. I hope you like eating frozen dinners. Alone. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am Tayla Andre. You are tuned in to the Wake Up with Tayla Andre show. It's not about the time of day that we link up, but about unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. And today's unorthodox conversation is with Nancy Duggan of Decoding Dyslexia. And I've joked many times in the past that I'm dyslexic, I have dyslexia, but I was never sure. Nancy, can you tell me, how can I as an adult get tested? How can I, because I believe that I may suffer from this disorder. That means, again, going back to the beginning, it's genetic, so my children should be tested. How can I get my children tested? How can I get myself tested? And then after testing, what are the next steps?
So for adults and children, it's very different things because language, especially written language, develops over time. So while it's relatively simple, as we already talked about, to screen, which is not a diagnosis, for kids with phonemic awareness and naming speed skills, it's quick, it's easy, and we know at that age, it's highly reliable of the kids that are going to have trouble learning to read. But many people go through life, are dyslexic, and don't find out till they're adults. They did learn to read because maybe the methods and the experience that they had, because our brains are what they call plastic, or there's plasticity, which our brains aren't really plastic, but that's the term they use. It always confuses me. But that's the term they use to say that, you know, a lot of what happens in our brain, and again, dyslexic brains are healthy brains. They're not diseased. Dyslexia is not a disease. The structures of our brains change when we learn things. So as a person with dyslexia who may process things differently, and it may take more time to process some things, it adapts. It adapts through the environment. So a person like yourself might be, you know, obviously accomplished person, access to knowledge and curriculum in school and whatever, but still says, am I dyslexic? Could be. A lot of people find out because they did learn to read, they think they're not dyslexic. But actually, dyslexia, because it's describing a brain organizational style or a structure, everyone's always dyslexic. The reading problems can go away because reading can be taught in most cases. It's a very small percentage, even of dyslexic kids, that can't learn to read.
I find that difficult to digest because I can be transparent, right? I can be honest with you guys. So I failed almost every spelling test. I have no idea how I have a diploma or a degree because I failed almost every spelling test we ever took.
Spelling is the hardest of the things, okay? So, but people cope. People are resilient. So adults with spelling issues that, you know, even after they've tried or whatever, you know, like thank goodness for spell check, right? But even spell check, you know, like it finds words that I didn't mean to use. So I think, oh, okay. But so how do you get tested? You would need what we call a complete neuropsych. So usually a neuropsychologist or a developmental psychologist would do testing. Now, because it's not a health risk, it doesn't usually get paid. You know, it's not something that's generally paid for.
But it is a risk in the sense of sustainability in the future.
It's a risk for kids. Kids can get this testing. And actually, again, if you ask in the schools in writing, I want a complete educational evaluation, your child is going to get the data. Many schools, however, won't say dyslexia. They'll say specific learning disability or speech and communication.
How do I, as a parent, say, I want you to name this? If you yourself said that the school will sometimes say we don't name
Great
that.
question. And what I would say to any parent who has a child with difficulty learning to read, difficulty in school, and on their disability list it says speech and communication or specific learning disability, I would say there's a document on our website that you can find under the tab of civil rights. And then it says IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Act, and dyslexia. You click on that, and there'll be a downloadable document from the Department of Education guidance that says that schools must name the disability. Specific learning disability is a group of them. And so often I'll go to an IEP meeting with a family and I'll say to the team who said we don't use that. And now I say, okay, well, here's the list of IDEA included specific learning disabilities. One of the first ones is minimal brain dysfunction. Does anyone here at the table think that this child has minimal brain dysfunction? Silence. Okay, cross that one out. How about developmental aphasia? Anybody here?
Hold on, Nancy, hold my hand, hold my hand. Why do I have to go through these lengths for you to acknowledge something that, what is the number? For the United States, what is the number?
Of people, it's like somewhere between about 10%. I would say the general ballpark figure is about 10% of the population.
10%.
Some people will say it's as high as 20. Some people will say it's as low as 5 because some people can be just a little dyslexic and some people can be very dyslexic. So it depends on where you start counting.
I'm not understanding why I have to sit at this table and, as a professional, tell you to acknowledge my child's.
If only you were around that table, we'd be all set. But you're not around that table, and you get, frowns, crossed arms, and eyebrows saying, well, we don't do that. So parents have to be, savvy and armed, and that's why there is a Decoding Dyslexia helping people do this in every state with not one penny of funding. Because when you've gone through all these hoops and gyrations or whatever, and whether your child is successful or floundering still, you look behind you and say there's a generation coming. And if I could just tell one other mother, one other family, one other kid that they're not stupid, that in fact, if the school adjusted the way they taught, this child would succeed. Why are we not doing that? Why are we marginalizing?
That's a great question.
5 to 10, so give it the lowest ball, 10%, so let's not say 1 in 5, because some people will say 1 in 5. There's a researcher Sally Shea, which she likes to say 1 in 5. Other people say, no, it's not that many. Who cares? You know, 10% of kids in Massachusetts have this problem. And the even more interesting thing is, yes, some people have this difference because of a genetic neurodiversity issue. We call it neurodiversity. But other kids can come to the same deficit in phonological awareness, not the processing speed, but the phonological awareness, simply because of socioeconomic status.
So for me, you say 10%, but in my circle of 10 friends, there's about 3 to 5 of us that may or may not suffer from dyslexia. And I honestly believe that number is greater than 10%, because when you finally sit down and go through the screening, and I think the reason why, not just Massachusetts, but other states as well, refuse to, before the age of 5, screen children for dyslexia, we will see those numbers rise to 60 and 70%. And then we have to acknowledge the fact that we've been failing our children.
It probably wouldn't be 60 to 70%, but you know, like, but you're right. It's very under-identified. And let me just say that in diverse communities, ethnically diverse and socioeconomically diverse communities, the statistics declare it should reflect the same. In other words, it shouldn't matter that what anyone's ethnic or socioeconomic situation is. This would be the same representation. However, last month, the Dyslexia Foundation had a presentation or a conference at Harvard Medical School, and you can get that online. But Julie Washington from the University of Atlanta, I believe, was there to say how African American students, and she studied students in Georgia, were over-identified for IEPs as they were older, but under-identified younger, and not representative in the same proportion for like learning disabilities like dyslexia. So they're not getting, when they get found, they're not getting matched up with the correct instruction. And what does that mean? Again, I'm sorry it's so complicated, but it just is.
No, that sounds pretty cutthroat.
It just is. There's actually something, and I can show you the form. It's called exclusionary factors. And if anyone just Googles SLD exclusionary factors Massachusetts, you'll see a flow chart. Okay? And the flow chart says, you know, is the kid, you know, having trouble reading? Yeah, okay. Is the kid experiencing education, good education? In Massachusetts, usually we say yes. And then it says, if the child has any of these things, these are the excluding factors. One of them is poor socioeconomic situation. One of them is diverse language background. One of them is socioeconomic language, I forget what the other one is. But whatever they are, okay, they're very subjective. So poverty, language differences, cultural differences. What is that? Okay, cultural differences. I kid you not, that's one of the things. So if you have a child that fits any of those, and you go through the flow chart, it says cannot have specific learning disability.
Hold on.
Excuse me?
Pause and rewind. Pause and rewind.
Excuse me? So if it said blindness, if blindness was on the other side, would you exclude anyone for those factors? No. So I just told you that specific learning disability, dyslexia, is neurobiological. You're born that way. But there's these exclusionary factors that says if they have this, they cannot be found.
So with encoded language, they're essentially saying that if your child is poor, if your child
culturally different, linguistically different, or socioeconomically different.
If you're poor, if you speak a different language, if you're
culturally different, whatever that means. Okay, totally subjective. And it says if that's the main factor in the reading problem, you can't have specific learning disability. Well, who decides that?
Okay, we are definitely going to have to figure out who decides that, and maybe it's you. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Nancy Duggan, Decoding Dyslexia, Tayla Andre. You are Waking Up with Tayla Andre. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. We'll be right back.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. At work or at play, you're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Oh, hey, she's cute. Nice going, man. Things are going great for you. You've earned a night out. Good drinks, good friends. Yeah, we can go ahead and call this a good night. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Not smart. Yeah, I saw that coming.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family?
This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort...
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything.
Oh, sorry. Go along, son!
It's always worth it.
Whoa! Master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
I am Tayla Andre. You are tuned in to the Wake Up with Tayla Andre show. Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. It's not about the time of day that we link up, but about opening your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. And today, our unorthodox conversation is with Nancy Duggan of Decoding Dyslexia. And Nancy is going to read for us. We were just talking about how we cannot use our phones in studio.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, sorry. I was going to look something up so I could read it to you.
But I will, you guys can follow TaylaAndre, Tayla Andre anywhere, and I will get that information for you to understand exactly what this coded language means and how we can help Nancy pass legislation to protect our youth, to protect our children, and so our children don't have to go through what we went through personally, because I didn't like failing spelling. I didn't like being pulled out of class. I didn't like the small, workspaces with two other kids and still wasn't getting it, but everybody else was getting it. Like, I am that child, and I don't want to see other children in that same position. So as a parent, please, Nancy, tell me what I have to do.
So parents, one, take care of your own first, okay? Like, I love people to join us, but I always tell parents, if you have kids and they're struggling, call us, meet with us. I talk to parents one-to-one all the time. There's not a fee or anything. We will help you find what you need to get the data on your child so that you can get the right services. We also run workshops, I'd be happy to do one in the community, on how to be a good consumer of reading services. Because if that pullout isn't meant for your dyslexic child, then that pullout is just reinforcing that they fail. And a lot of, it also helps for kids to be self-aware, to understand their differences, their diversity, and then they can tackle it. A lot of kids sigh a big sigh of relief. Oh, that's why I have a problem.
That's what it is.
Okay? So that's one thing you can do. Take care of your kids first. And we're happy to help with that. But the other thing is the community. The community needs to have dyslexia awareness. We need to understand. It's so detailed. I wish it was like ABC, you're done. But it's detailed. And parents that know are better prepared to help us change things. Talk to your state legislators, talk to your teachers and your school committees. Say dyslexia, learn more about the word, learn about the science, and say dyslexia. That's our big hashtag, say dyslexia. Don't say, maybe, time will tell, we're working hard. Say dyslexia, and don't wait, okay? So those are the things parents can do.
Don't wait.
Don't wait.
Hashtag dyslexia.
Yep. Waiting to fail is often what parents are told. Well, we're giving them help, but they're making a little progress.
Yeah.
But and they know they are not with their peers. Do not wait. That's a wait to fail model. They won't find your kid like they found my kid when she was going into 4th grade. That's late. Not impossible, but late. I have kids that I'm finding in senior year of high school. Senior year of high school. This kid's been on an IEP forever. So the IEP isn't the answer if you're not getting the right services.
Say that again.
The IEP is not the answer if you're not getting the right services. So we're happy to do workshops on how to be better consumers of reading services.
And we definitely, Wake Up with Tayla Andre is going to host, we're going to name it actually Say Dyslexia. We're going to name it #SayDyslexia. We are going to have a community event in order to educate parents so you guys can be fully aware, because I feel like just 1 hour isn't enough. We've covered so much.
It's hard. I mean, and parents can help too by keeping the conversation going, ask us, look online. There's so much great resources there. And also, remember that legislation's out there to screen everyone. It's House Bills 330 and 28, I can't do it without reading them, sorry. 2872, those are the House bills.
Say them one more time.
House 330 and 2872, and then the Senate Bill 313 and Senate Bill 294. So especially Senate Bill 294, which would include teacher training and, you know, other facets more than just the dyslexia definition.
Senate Bill 294 is really the legislation that we want to
That's kind of like the gold one, but 330 and 313 are mirror, like one in the House and one in the Senate, and just getting that conversation going would be great. You know, we've been doing this for 5 years.
Okay.
5 years. We've had 2 hearings. We've had neuroscientists, parents, teachers, all testifying to get this bill passed. Just like you said, just the definition and early screening. Early screening helps every kid, because whether your deficit in phonemic awareness is because of dyslexia or some other issue, you'll be identified early and targeted with the intervention.
Nancy, what is the pushback? What is the pushback, and why hasn't this bill or these bills or bills similar to this bill been passed already?
I'm not sure. I mean, I hear just different things, but I don't really know how to tell. I mean, sometimes I'm hearing that the state wants, you know, just one screener. Other times I'm saying the towns want to pick their own screener. This bill doesn't care either way if you screen for phonemic awareness and RAN. There's loads of measures out there. So the state could pick one and say this is it, or the communities could say no, we want to pick our own, as long as they're valid norm measures of phonemic awareness and RAN. And how long would it take? The study done by the National Institute of Health supported MIT and Harvard right here in Massachusetts. The best, most recent research on screening took place here, and it took 20 minutes to 30 minutes per kid.
So that's faster than MCAS. That's faster
Sure
than
is.
all the other tests that they have to take every 6 weeks, parks and everything else. We've come to the top of the hour, Nancy. My soul is discontent right now, because it's just like, this is common sense. It's past common sense bills.
It certainly is.
And I believe that repetition is the mother of all learning. So I would like for you to repeat the website, the phone number, the bills that we as parents should be focusing on, and the bills that we need to contact our legislators about.
Okay, so it is Decoding Dyslexia Massachusetts, and you can find us on Facebook. We also have our own website, decodingdyslexiama.org. And the number to call is 978-621-6064. Emails through the website are the best way, because then they don't get lost. So you go to the website, click right on to contact us, and you'll send us a direct email. We're happy to help anybody. Thanks.
Well, I'm so glad that you've helped me today understand a little bit about how I've been feeling about my own possible dyslexia. I am Tayla Andre. Again, I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you soon.